everyone, to the CG and J podcast. We are back, and you know what season it is. It is the draft season, baby. It's right around the corner. Maybe like, I think, what, 2 more weeks, a week and a half, and the NFL draft is here. So we have a lot of work to get done. We have a lot of positions to talk about. But first, we have to open it with the most important position, which is the quarterback position. And we have some help talking about this too. We got our man Brandon Pyle. Come out and show yourself, Brandon. It has been a minute. Those who have watched the podcast back on Instagram would have recognized Brandon Pyle. He was on many of our shows, and hope to bring him back some more this season. And he goes to Liberty University, and you guys already know the prospect that is at Liberty, Malik Willis, who have some going top 10 in their mock drafts, the number 1 quarterback in our mock drafts. So we'll get his opinion on Malik Willis in a few minutes. But before that, first and foremost, how you doing, Jacob? How you doing, Brandon? What's happening? How y'all feeling about this draft?
I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, confidence is everything. I mean, last year, solid wrap up, close CG out on that mock draft.
I got demolished on that mock draft.
No. You did it based off of who you would draft.
Yeah, like who I would draft. Right.
But how you doing? How you doing, Brandon?
Doing good. Excited for the new pod episode.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for joining us. All right, so before we get into 2022, let's talk some 2021 rankings. I pulled them up right now. We posted them. I think it's almost been a year since then, which is kind of crazy.
I know.
But your QB rankings, your top 5 QB rankings, you had Trevor Lawrence at number 1. You had Zach Wilson at number 2. You had Justin Fields at number 3. You had Mac Jones at number 4. And you had Trey Lance at number 5. My QB rankings, we were kind of different. I had Zach Wilson at 1, Trevor Lawrence at 2, Mac Jones at 3, Kellen Mond at 4. Remember that guy? Justin Fields at 5. So a lot to talk about here, especially on my end. So Jacob, how did you like your list last year? What would you have changed? Like in overall, are you proud of your top 5 QB list in 2021?
For in the moment, it wasn't bad at all. I mean, for now, obviously, I would change it some. I would put Mac Jones at 1, and and I would put Fields at 2, and then I would put probably Lawrence at 3, and then Wilson at 4, and then Trey Lance at 5. Not because Trey Lance is bad; it's just we haven't seen anything from him yet. I mean,
we'll see a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. The ceiling for him is super high though. So I don't know. I like it.
I really liked your list. I don't think you really need to change up that much.
Mac Jones is for sure the best QB out of all of them.
He had the best.
When you make the playoffs, I mean, that's kind of what happens, I guess. I mean,
that is true. I mean. So I pretty much I liked my list. There's obviously one that I would change, which is Justin Fields at 5. I think that was a little bit too low, but he made a lot of improvements, coming in. One thing I said about Justin Fields was he was the best deep ball thrower in this whole draft, and he proved that last year. So I probably would move Justin Fields to I would go maybe as high as 3. I really did like Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones, if we're talking about awards, if we're talking about what he's accomplished in his rookie year, he definitely is number 1. But I still saw a lot of great throws from Zach Wilson, especially to end the season. And I thought Trevor Lawrence played pretty good down the stretch. So I don't know if you're talking about, hey, if we're the next 10 years, will you take Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson? I may have to go with the top 2 guys. I think Mac Jones played on a better team. I think Mac Jones had a better defense. He had a better coaching staff around him. I think he just had a lot of the other things that, we don't really look at that were better than Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. So if we're talking about the player, I think I might keep Wilson and Trevor Lawrence at 1 and 2. We'll move Justin Fields up to 4. And then Trey Lance, I probably would bring in that top 5 conversation just because he has played more games. So I think overall, my new list, if I had to revamp it, I probably will stick with my top 2 players. I'll keep Mac Jones I'll probably go Justin Fields or Mac Jones in that spot. I'm gonna stick with Mac Jones, move Justin Fields up to 4, and then put Trey Lance up to 5. But Justin Fields and Mac Jones are really tied at that 3rd spot for me.
Yeah.
What is something that you're really proud of looking back at your list? What is something that you're like, man, I got that one right?
I mean, nothing really strikes my eye. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I believed in Justin Fields a lot last year.
You did.
Because I think I remember, you know, we knew who the solid first 2 QBs were going to be in terms of, you know, drafted first. And then when the 49ers picked, everyone was like, who's he going to pick? Trey Lance or Mac Jones? And then Justin Fields was there. And I mean, I felt like I was fighting for Justin Fields, and I feel like
you were.
I felt like it was wrong for him to get such a bad rap considering how great he was at Ohio State and like what he did for Ohio State. I mean, the year prior, he led them to the national championship. So, I mean.
Yeah. And I think also, you know, you have CJ Stroud playing that position this year. You see the drop off between him and Justin Fields. You know, a lot of people are like, that's Ohio State. They're a good football team. You know, they're already talented. They already have a pretty good defense. But Ohio State did not make the playoffs, the college football playoffs. Yeah. You know, so Justin Fields, looking back on it, you know, at least for me, you know, man, he really should be top 3 because he did a lot for that program that kind of went under the radar. And yes, he had talent, but CJ Stroud had 2 top receivers in this draft that we're going to talk about down the road, you know, and still wasn't able to carry Ohio State over the hump. So I think Justin Fields definitely got a way worse of a rep. And I think if we're really going to put Kyle Shanahan on a lie detector, I think they probably would have gone, you know, Justin Fields over Trey Lance. You know, again, I know Trey Lance haven't played a whole season yet, but that was a very, very crazy pick in my opinion. I think maybe down the future, Justin Fields will prove to be the wrong one. So let's bring Brandon into this conversation. You watched a lot of football last year. Which rookie quarterback you think impressed you the most or was kind of underwhelming?
I think one of the most impressive QBs to watch, obviously Mac Jones did really well. But I think one of the most like under the radar rookie QBs that I saw was Davis Mills, who just completely came out of nowhere for the Texans. And people had like basically zero expectations for him, you know, coming in as the backup. And I think he really played well and played himself into probably he might be a starter next season.
Yeah, he will.
So I think he did well. And I think he's definitely one of the biggest like under the radar QBs that nobody expected. An underwhelming QB that I would say would be I guess I just have to go with like I don't want to give him a bad rap, but Trevor Lawrence didn't do super well. But of course, you know, that's just a product of like the team he was on. The coaching staff situation was just terrible, and the team, he didn't really have much around him. So you can't really put that on him. But of course, he was the number 1 overall pick with high expectations. So yeah.
I think you're right about that Trevor Lawrence pick because I've heard a lot, especially with other, you know, NFL analysts and podcasts, things of that nature. A lot of people think the same thing, similar to Trevor Lawrence, that it wasn't as a whole run of a season that they were hoping for.
Right.
You know, despite, you know, you had, you know, all the stuff with Urban Meyer and the whole bunch, different coaching staffs and just all that drama. People were still expecting a lot more from him. And there were some concerns of him throwing the football, making the right plays. But I think talent-wise, I'm still confident that I think he'll plan out to be a pretty good quarterback.
Yeah, especially if they can get a solid coaching staff.
Yeah, and he was high on interceptions too. He
Mhm.
led these rookies at interceptions, and but I think I think I like to make changes they made during the offseason. I think he'll do a lot better going into year two. So, anything
Yep.
else you want to say, Jacob, about our
I think
2021
I
list?
think I totally forgot about Davis Mills. I
Yeah,
mean, that man earned his spot at QB. And honestly, you know, I if I would have thought about Davis Mills, I think everyone just totally forgets about Davis Mills. But if I would have thought about it, I would have actually put him in my top five instead of Trey Lance. That if I had to, change something, not because Trey Lance is bad,
hasn't
it's just
proven a lot.
because it's just because we saw Davis Mills actually play. So, I mean, with that being said, I mean, that's all I got. But I like my top five. It was all right. It wasn't too disappointing.
Yeah, I probably would definitely have Davis Mills take over that Kellen Mond spot at 5. Um, he definitely played a very impressive rookie season, and to win that starting job, especially being as underrated as he was, is kind of crazy. So I'm looking forward to see what he does in year 2, and I hope the Texans be patient with him.
Mhm.
I hope
Yeah.
this isn't like a Drew Lock situation with the Broncos where he started towards the later end of the season, did pretty
Mhm.
well, came back, and all of a sudden there's this pressure of, hey, we got to win the division, and stuff like that. Be patient. You have a good
Right.
young prospect right there. And, compared to Davis Mills and some of these other quarterbacks we're going to talk about, he's definitely high up the list if we're going to put him in the 2022 rankings.
Mhm.
So before I jump the gun, but let's talk about a little bit of our QB rankings. And before we do that, Brandon, Brandon is almost an expert with Malik Willis. There's no one that I know that is more knowledgeable about this crazy quarterback prospect. So before we talk about our take on Malik Willis and how we rank him, what are your first impressions of Malik Willis? What do you think about his talent? You think he can, should be the first quarterback taken? What teams really need him right now? So just give me the whole shebang about Malik Willis.
Yeah, I think Malik Willis is easily the most talented QB in the draft this season, just because of his running ability, his throwing power, his ability to break tackles, all of that. Um, he's definitely one of the most raw talents, of course, as everybody pretty much knows. Just because he's only had 2 years as a starter, he hasn't played against a ton of really good competition like some of the other QBs have. But I think any of these teams that need a QB, like Panthers, Lions, Steelers, Falcons, yeah, CG Steelers. I think all of these teams, if they have a chance to get him, they got it. They should go for it. Um, a lot of people are high on Kenny Pickett as well, but I just feel like Kenny Pickett is the safe option that he'll do it for you for a few years maybe, but he's not going to be. I don't see Kenny Pickett as a franchise guy.
Mhm.
I think Malik Willis will. He might not have the greatest rookie season of all time, but he might be not great at the beginning. But if these teams give him a chance and give him and are patient with him, I definitely think he can be a franchise QB. Um, so I'm really high on Malik,
Yeah,
just
that
because of what he
sounds.
can do on the field.
What do you think his what's his best skill set? Deep balls, accuracy. What is his best? You have to pick one thing out of his game that you're like, that's what he does extremely well. That's his best skill. What would it be?
Ooh, that's tough. I think I might have to go with two. I think one of the things is his deep ball is really good. I was looking last night and I saw something that said he has a 96.5 PFF grade on throws over 20 yards, which was third out of all QBs in college football, which is
Wow.
crazy. He can his deep balls are they're accurate and they're in stride, and I really feel like he's really good at the deep balls, and then also just his ability to break tackles when he's on the run and get
Yeah.
out of those
Yeah.
situations is just second to none.
Mhm.
Yeah, man. I think so too. When I was watching a little bit of his highlights and stuff, I was like, oh yeah, this is This is almost what you saw from kind of like Patrick Mahomes, Zach Wilson in college. You know,
Right.
the angles. You know, how do you like? You just see the throw, and you're like, man, how did you fit that in that
Right.
that window right there? You know, so I think you definitely are talking truth to him at that point. But also we understand that Malik Willis generally isn't the consensus number one overall QB. There is a
Right.
lot of discussion with him and Pickett, even Matt Corral, some of these other guys that we'll talk about. So it's not like Trevor Lawrence situation where everyone's like, yeah, he's a number one QB and a number one pick off the board. So what do you think is holding Malik Willis back from kind of having that, man, boom, he's the number one QB and you're silly of thinking he's not?
I think the biggest thing is just like the competition that Liberty has played hasn't been great, especially compared to like, obviously Kenny Pickett, he plays in, I think it's what, the ACC.
Yeah.
And so obviously he's played a lot of good competition, Matt Corral, SEC. So there's a lot of other quarterbacks that have played harder competition and have also, excelled. And so I think that's one of the big things. And of course, Malik has only been a starter for 2 years. So that's also one thing that's might be holding teams back.
Yeah, because he was a backup for Auburn, right? Before he went. Yeah, so for him just to play 2 years, I think that is a little bit, okay, is he even ready yet?
Right.
Do you consider him a day one starter? If you were the Lions, and let's say you're tired of Jared Goff, or let's say you were Pittsburgh and you had a chance to snatch him, is he a day one starter, bro?
I definitely think he could be. I don't know. I feel like most of these teams that he's likely to get drafted to will likely have like a QB competition scenario with like a veteran guy, obviously, and then Malik will come in. So he'd have to earn that spot for sure. But I definitely think he could be. I don't think he's gonna I don't think he's gonna be like insane his rookie season if he does become the day one starter, just because of like those things I said, like he doesn't have a whole lot of experience as like the QB1. So he'll have to take some time to like get used to that and just get settled. But I definitely think he could be.
Okay. Very impressive. Very impressive. Jacob, you have any questions for Brandon before we get into our top 5 list?
Well, Brandon and I like speak eye to eye on this. So I mean, I don't have anything to add. I mean, might as well ask the expert on Malik, the number one fanboy, Brandon Pyle himself. But I mean, I guess my only question is, I mean, if we're wrapping it up, who is your top 5 QBs in this class?
Oh yeah, we want to hear it. We want to
hear it. Maybe I might have to change maybe I'll have to change my list up.
Too late. It's too late now. You can't get Brandon on the show and change the list.
Live on show, changing his list.
Changing his list.
No.
All right, Brandon, let's hear it.
Let's see, top 5 QBs. I haven't done a whole lot of research into the other QBs, but I guess my top 5 would probably be, obviously I'd put Malik at 1 because I'm biased, like, but I do think he could be the number 1. Like, I do think he could be the best out of all of these guys.
Sure.
Number 2, I'd probably go Kenny Pickett at 2.
Okay.
And then I'd do, let's see, Desmond Ridder, I think, would be 3.
Oh wow.
And then I'd probably put, I think people are underrated on Sam Howell. I'd put Sam Howell at 4. He had not a great season last season, but I think he could definitely be a great QB. And then 5, I'd probably do Matt Corral.
Matt Corral at 5. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I know some people had Matt Corral as high as 1.
Yeah. So I've seen him all over the place.
Yeah. So that's really the 2022 QB list. Some people have these guys 1, 3, 4. There's no consensus.
Right.
So scouts are really going to have to do their work. Thank you, Brandon, for coming on to the show. Appreciate you, man. A lot of good insight we got from you, and definitely we'll be thinking about your QB list as we talk about ours. So appreciate you, bro. We definitely have to have you back on the show, especially maybe during
for sure
preseason with Malik Willis and especially where he lands after the draft. So thank you so much for showing up, bro, and we'll see you later.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, peace
All right,
out.
see you, Brando.
All right, man. It is just you and me, mano y mano, bro. And we're talking top 5 QB list. No Brandon. This is going to help you or save your list or anything like that. It's you and me, bro. Let's start. At number 5. Wait. Before we go to number 5.
I like it.
How do you see this QB draft and holistically compared to last year's? Is it as strong as last year's? Is it weaker? Is it very weak? It's the weakest we've seen in a while. What do you think, bro?
I think a lot of people like are saying this class is so weak. I mean, I think there's a lot of unproven talent, and and they use that as a bad thing,
Right.
which I don't think that's necessarily always a bad thing. I mean, the only finished product that we see here is Kenny Pickett, to be honest, to be fair. I mean, I mean, he's had been the only one with that experience. Maybe Desmond Ritter with Cincinnati, but even still, I think, his dual threat ability, it still makes him, not predictable, and, people like finished product, and they like to see finished product rather than upside. And I think if you look at it just like that, then obviously last year's class is so much better, which I do think last year's class is better, but
yeah,
I think this one gets a bad rap because they are not proven enough.
I think that's true. I think that's a very good point. It's a great way to put it. These guys we didn't see in the national championship game. We didn't see compete in the college football playoffs. The only guy we saw was Desmond Ritter, and he, got destroyed against Alabama. So there's no national championship games here. There's no Justin Fields who, been there. There's no Trevor Lawrence who won
Who's
one.
Been there.
Yeah,
Who's
and
Mac
won.
Jones.
Mac Jones too, who's a
won
champion. These guys, they're way more under the radar, and a lot of the national college football fans, depending on your favorite team, you might never have seen these guys play. So
Yeah.
I think that's the reason too. But I think just overall, just putting it bluntly, this quarterback class is just not as good as last year's. We had 5 starters coming out of last year. We had Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. What is that guy that played for the Texans?
Davis Mills.
Those are 5 starters. 5 starters in one QB class. That's insane. And so I think because of that too, because we had maybe a more recency bias, we're like, oh well, these guys are going to be starters. We're not going to have 5 QBs in the top 10 off the gate, so they can't be that good, can they? That's not normal. That's abnormal what happened last year. So I think this is a weaker QB draft, but I think there's a lot of talent here that if you look deep into it, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, if you just give them a chance, it's really good. I mean,
Right.
There's a lot of guys that are like, I mean, it's just so unproven, and like that's not a bad thing. People make that out as a bad thing. I mean, yeah, it might affect their draft stock, but at the same time, doesn't mean that they won't be, great when they come out. I mean, and actually get put on the pads and play. But I don't know. I think this class gets a bad rap, but I mean, in the end, I do think it's not one of the best classes that we've had in the past. But I mean, doesn't mean it can't be good.
Yeah.
So
right. So, all right, man. Without further ado, let's start us off at number 5. Who do you have as your 5th best quarterback? I'm excited to hear this.
I got Cincinnati's QB Desmond Ritter. A lot of people have him way higher than 5. I mean, like you said, this class is everywhere. But I mean, I think a lot about Desmond Ritter. I think he kind of because at the end of the college football, they had Malik, Kenny Pickett, and Matt Corral and Sam Howell, And then out of nowhere comes Desmond Ritter, just jumping up the draft boards. And I don't know where that came from. Maybe he had a good pro day. Maybe it was the NFL Combine. But I think he's gonna be a good QB. I don't like him as much as I do the other prospects. Just because you know I saw some of the tape he produces. I mean, nothing really struck out when he played Alabama. I mean, yes,
Nothing did.
I'm like yeah, he's playing Alabama and it's Cincinnati, but I mean, his whole career leading up in Cincinnati when they, quote unquote, got cheated out of the playoffs, came down to that moment when he actually got to prove himself against a team like Alabama, or well, not a team like Alabama, but Alabama itself. And I think he didn't capitalize on it. So in the end, I that's why I have him at number 5. I mean, yeah, I think you can bring him in and you can have him as a starter because he has that experience. But at the same time, I wouldn't trade everything to get him.
Right. And I think also what helped with Desmond Ritter, in my opinion, is the record. He was, I think they went undefeated last season in the Power 5. And, you can talk about, well, he didn't, the competition in the Power 5 is not what it used to be. It's not the same level as the SEC. When you have an undefeated record, scouts are going to fall for that. Fans are going to fall for that. So I think that's a thing where, teams are like, well, if he's undefeated, he had to do something well. And they probably just kind of nitpick a little bit too much. But for me, he's also my number 5 too. For similar reasons as you said. I think the pros for Desmond Ritter is that he's very tough. He definitely has, I think he's a smart QB too. Has very good intangibles. A lot of these guys have great intangibles. But I think the biggest thing for me is, I don't know if I trust his accuracy. His mechanics were okay. I think you see a lot of it. A lot of times he's just using his arm to throw instead of his whole body. The thing with that is, it doesn't control, you don't control the ball really well. You don't control your accuracy really well with that. If you watch guys like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, their whole upper body is torquing with the throw too. And so I think also that's just because, there's a lack of mechanics. But you don't really see a lot of lasers. You don't see a lot of, whoa, how did he get the ball in that tight window? Like we talked about with Malik Willis, and that's what you need in the National Football League. You need guys that, okay, yeah, it's not a lot of space in between the safety and the corner, but with my arm, with my velocity, with my throw, I can fit that ball in there. And you just didn't see that a lot of times with Desmond Ritter. And then also the thing we talked about earlier, the competition was just it's just so hard to evaluate him because he's playing against teams that just quite frankly aren't even on his level. I think a lot of people gave that to Zach Wilson. It was like, hey, BYU's not playing against teams, like Trevor Lawrence is playing against, like Mac Jones is playing against. But I think if you're comparing Desmond Ritter's competition to Zach Wilson's competition, I think Zach Wilson's competition is better. I really do. They played against some teams that I look back and say, okay, they're not the best, but they're still decent. They still work. And that's the reason for me that I just don't have them that high, is because lack of accuracy, lack of anything that he does over the top.
I agree.
And then also his competition it's I don't want to say pathetic. I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's not on the same level as some of these other QBs that we've seen, especially last year.
And like the times he has gotten to prove it, it's not been like that impressive outside of maybe the Notre Dame game. If that's what comes to mind. I mean, he played a great game against Notre Dame. He dismantled Notre Dame single-handedly.
Right.
But then again, when it came to Alabama, he couldn't keep up. So
Right. And we see, Notre Dame, they're that football team too that does really well in the regular season. But when they sometimes get to the national championship, semifinals, they're not that great. So let's move on to our fourth best team. All right, man. Let's go to number 4 on the list. Who's your fourth best prospect on the quarterback position?
I actually don't have a fourth. I have 2 guys tied for third.
Ooh, okay. You had that last year, I think, too.
I did. Or I did for a different position, I think. I
Okay.
can't remember. But anyways, for 3, I got I'll start with this prospect first, just because I don't want to give away the other. Number 3, I got Sam Howell.
Okay.
He tied for 3. I got Sam Howell. I have Sam Howell because he has accuracy. You know, you see it in his game sometimes. I mean, yes, he would lose some games, some close games that are like, how are you losing these games? And then some games he'll just get blown out and like, what happened? And a lot of times I felt like over the season it was like, I think it was the players on his team as well. But then you can hate and be like, well, he should lead the team. He's the QB. He needs to lead the team. I mean, he tried his best. I mean, he's the reason why North Carolina was competitive last year.
For sure.
But with that being said, yeah, I got Sam Howell because of the accuracy, the deep ball accuracy, and I like his technique, and I think he has a lot of potential and hidden value that a lot of these other QBs don't necessarily have. And I think that's why I like him better than Desmond Ridder. But yeah, I got him at tied for number 3.
Number 3. I have him at number 4. Number 4. For me, that's Sam Howell too. And I think Sam Howell was kind of put in an unfair position. He was really hyped as a freshman because he put UNC on the map, in the terms of the college football realm. And, he throws a great deep ball, has a very strong arm, and when you see those highlights, those 60-yard completions, those 50-yard completion, touchdown completions too, people start looking around. It's like, man, he's just a freshman. He's just a freshman. Similar thing they did with Trevor Lawrence. And eventually reality starts sinking in, especially when you lose guys like Michael Carter, Juwan Brown, who I really loved, that receiver. When your team starts getting lesser and lesser and lesser skill-wise, it's hard to be that, hey, man, I'm still that guy. I'm still that man. And I think Sam Howell was put in that position where it was like, he was never really, that complete player. But because of the highlights, because of him just resurrecting the UNC football program, now he's put in a position of, hey man, be the number 1 overall pick, which I think was just unfair given who he is as a football player. So I think if you get past that, if you get past all the hype and the disappointment, I think Sam Howell is a respectable football player. I think, he's really tough. He can take hits. He broke 65 break tackles last year, 65 at a QB. And he's not the biggest too. He's not a big guy. He's thicker. He has good muscle on him, but he's not like a Malik Willis. He's not a Kenny Pickett. He's not even a Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder is like 6'4". So he's lacking some size in that area. But I think, as you said, he's just a more accurate thrower than Ridder. And I think he just has more natural talent. If you see him play, there's some throws that he makes that's like, okay, that wasn't the best, let's say mechanics or technique, but his pure talent can get him to throw the ball and complete some of these, NFL level throws, and so I think just talent alone, I think just puts him in that top 4 position for me. But I think there are some things he can work on. I think, footwork in the pocket. I think obviously, mechanics too. I mentioned that, but I wouldn't stress those cons too much, because I think there is a lot to love here. And he does remind me a lot of Baker Mayfield a little bit, a little shorter Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield has a stronger arm than Sam Howell, but the way they approach the game just reminded me a lot of Mayfield back in his Oklahoma days. So
I like that comparison.
yeah. So Sam Howell is definitely my number 4. I don't think I could tie him at number 3.
Yeah,
but
I haven't tied. Yeah,
I don't think I could tie him with my number 3rd pick. But I think 4 is definitely a respectable area for Sam Howell, and I think he's definitely going to get picked up by some teams maybe in that 3rd, 4th round.
yep. And tied for number 3rd with Sam Howell, I got Kenny Pickett.
Oh wow, okay.
Kenny Pickett. Yep. I don't like the finished product from Kenny Pickett.
Okay.
Let's talk about, like, when you talk about Kenny Pickett, you think, oh, okay, yeah, he's been in college football for a while now, but how long has he been relevant? 1 year, and that was last year. Yeah, it was great stats, great season, great play, but I don't like Kenny Pickett that much, and I don't like
Why don't you have it at 4 then? It seemed like it seemed like he would be number 4 the way you talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I put I don't know. I have him tied with 3 just because of the, like, how he's prospect, I guess. I mean, I guess I would put him at number 4. I would rather have Sam Howell than Kenny Pickett. So I guess I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Probably Kenny Pickett at 4 and Sam Howell at 3.
Okay.
But yeah, I think there's too much finished product there. And I mean, look at his age. I mean, what is he, like 28 now? No, I'm just kidding. No, he's 24.
It feels like he's been playing at Pitt for a while.
For forever. But the thing is, like, I mean, like, when you get that old, I mean, like, it's like you're 24 playing against 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
If you really think about it like that. I mean, it's like kind of like, I mean, you're gonna do well sooner or later. I mean, more you play, more experienced you get. So I mean, it's like, how much is actually there? I think, he's gonna go much higher than, number 4 prospect. But I like him at 4, honestly. I like him more than Ritter, but I don't like I don't like him more than Sam Howell in the end. I mean, I had him tied with Sam Howell, but after thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, number 4. Kenny Pickett, number 4. So a lot of your saying is what other people would use as positives with Kenny Pickett. He's experienced. He's been playing the position longer than any of these guys. He's coming in with so much
That's
knowledge,
true.
with so much, with so much football being played. So a lot of people will use that as, a plus, but you're turning it into as, hey man, at the level he's at right now, at the age he's at right now, we should really be expecting more than what Kenny Pickett has actually produced. So I think that's a good way of putting it. But he's not my number 3 pick. Matt Corral is my number 3 prospect. Coming out of Ole Miss, I think he's a very accurate thrower. He throws a very beautiful football, probably the better football than any of these guys. Maybe up there with Malik Willis, but it's a tight spiral. And hands down, he has the quickest release out of any of these guys. Just boom, before you even know it, the football's out of his hand. And I think that's a plus too, especially in the days of, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson. These guys have quick releases too. Everybody needs them nowadays. That's just how the game is being played. You can't take 3 or 4 seconds to throw the football. It needs to be just like that, out in like a second and a half or 2. And that's what Matt Corral does at such a high level. I think he gets through his reads very well. Also, you're going to see him go through the first receiver, the second receiver, the third receiver. And I think guys like Sam Howell and Ritter, I think sometimes, especially Desmond Ritter, they don't really get their progressions as they probably should. You don't see their head moving as much. And I think in the NFL, the first guy is probably for like 70% of the plays ain't going to be open. So if you don't know how to get through your reads, you're not going to be a very good quarterback. And I think that's what Matt Corral does pretty well. I think he's a really good scrambler, not on the level as Willis, as we talked about earlier, but he definitely has a speed and wiggle to him, and he can take hits as well. I think just the really thing that I really liked about him was just his strong arm. He has a very powerful arm. And I think that's what a lot of teams are going to be interested in if they draft him. A con for me, I just don't see a lot that he does, over the top. I don't see the Willis talent. I don't see necessarily throwing the football as well as maybe Kenny Pickett did. I think I just wanted a lot more from him, and I think because he played for Ole Miss, who plays in the SEC, he's playing against tougher competition. He's playing against Bama. He's playing against LSU. He's playing against these top 5 prospects coming out of high school. So I think I also have to be a little bit careful and not over man, I want more, I want more. Because out of all these guys, he's playing against the hardest teams. So
no, for sure.
I think that's why I had to put Matt Corral at number 3, is because I don't know if I've seen enough to make him go up to that top 2 spot. But I think, the way he handled himself at Ole Miss, competing, developing too, because there was a time where people were like, especially Ole Miss fans were like, we don't want nothing to do with Matt Corral. I think he had 5 interceptions in a game at one point. And you're not going to see that nowadays with Matt Corral. He's a much smarter football player than that. So I think he's on the up and up. I think he's on the right trend. But I just didn't see enough to put him in front of these next 2 guys. So Matt Corral is my number 3, but I'm interested to hear who you have at your number 2 spot. Give it to me. Who you have at your number 2?
And that's why I have Matt Corral at number 2.
Okay.
Exactly what you said. The SEC is the best conference in football. I mean,
is it close at this point? Is it any conference right now?
After last year having Georgia and Bama in the national championship, I don't see how it is.
No, me either.
But with all that being said, I think Matt Corral, he's proven, one, and he plays against competition that is legit and competition that he'll be playing against on Sundays. And 3, he still has a lot of upside to him. I mean, the only negatives that I really have about Matt Corral is his injury past. I mean, he's small.
He is a smaller guy, yeah. And he's not as built as Sam Howell.
Yeah,
Sam Howell is small, but he seems to have a little bit more muscle.
Muscle.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like his, but I mean, yes, he's smaller, but at the same time, he's a pretty good dual threat QB in terms of, he can escape the pocket if he needs to and make that throw. He's accurate. He has a great deep ball. And if you put on his tape at Ole Miss, you can see him trucking guys, legitimately lowering his shoulder, making contact with the defender and not sliding, which I know will have to change.
Definitely will change.
Yeah,
it will change,
especially after the injury. But I mean, seeing that gets me fired up as a fan. Number 1, seeing that, I mean, most fans are like, "Oh no," but no, that shows nothing to me. I mean, that just shows that he wants it. He wants every yard, every inch to get the ball in the end zone or get that first down. So I mean, I think he's tough, and I think people saying he's too small and injury prone. I mean, every time I hear that from Matt Corral haters, I just turn on the tape of him, just bull rushing people, which is unbelievable for players his size. But he has that heart and he has the competitive nature. So I like Matt Corral at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, all these guys on these lists have that dog mentality. I mean, I don't know any of these guys. I'm like, they're playing a little bit soft. Or they could have put the shoulder in and gone for that first yard, and they're being too cautious. Nah, all these guys, in my opinion, has this mentality of, hey man, I'm getting this first down, and you're gonna have to just bully me, or you just have to throw me to the ground if you want to stop me. So. But yeah, I think going back to Matt Corral too, he's definitely very interesting. And I think the injury history also played a little bit factor with me having him at number 3. Just because being at that size, being at that smaller size, and having some of those injuries that he's been having and have right now, you have to be a little bit hesitant of that. But the talent is definitely enough. It's definitely there. And I'm excited to see how he pans out in the NFL too. But my number 2 would be Kenny Pickett. You were pretty low on Kenny Pickett when you were talking about him, but I think there's a lot of stuff that he does well, and I think there's a lot of stuff that I think we could debate on that he does better than Matt Corral. I think number 1 would be, I think he avoids pressure better than any of these guys. You're going to see, his feel for, okay, the defensive edge is coming. The linebacker is about to blitz me. Let me just pivot this way, pivot left, and escape. He's a really good at escaping edge rushers. I think he has good speed on him. I think he has good legs. I think he's a great athlete. And I love his mechanics too. I think he throws similar to how Aaron Rodgers throws, across the body. Great speed, great, just great control of the football. And I really like his mentality. Very patient thrower. You're not going to see him, throw recklessly. And I think that just goes to his experience. He's been playing this position for a long time. And so you're not going to see some of the rookie mistakes as much as I think you'll see with guys like, maybe Malik Willis, maybe a Desmond Ridder. Now, Sam Howell's been playing for a good amount too. But 4 years is a lot of football. And I think, with all the other stuff that I talked about, I think he's the most NFL ready prospect out of any of these guys. Now, does that make him the best prospect? No, in my opinion, because there's still one guy that's above him. But I think a lot of teams are going to like him being more of that safer option, especially teams maybe like Carolina, who's kind of been, hey, we have Cam Newton starting, we have PJ Walker starting, we have Sam Darnold starting. We just need a guy that can come in, throw the football well, and not lose us the game. But I think a lot of teams are going to be attracted to that. So I think that's going to have Kenny Pickett going pretty early too. Some of the cons with him is that he doesn't do anything special. He doesn't do anything over the top, just what you were talking about. Hey man, you've been playing for 4 years. What's that it factor you got? What's that?
Yeah.
What's that
Yeah.
crazy, oh, wow, that's really impressive. You're not going to see that with Kenny Pickett. He's a very meat and potatoes quarterback. And so because of that, I couldn't put him over our number 1 guy. That I think it's kind of obvious who we have at number 1 at this point, but I just couldn't do that because for 4 years, as you're talking about, there has to be something that's just like, whoa, that is really, really, really good. And you're not going to get that with Kenny Pickett. I don't really know if he has a super strong arm. I don't know if he has a stronger arm than Matt Corral. I don't think he does, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, no.
I put Matt Corral's arm over Kenny Pickett's. But I think because of the professionalism you see him play, I think because of the way he approaches the game, the accuracy, the patience that he has in the pocket, the ability to escape rushers, I think he's worthy of being that number 2 quarterback coming off the board. So
I also want to defend Matt Corral again one last time about what you said about him being injury prone. I was thinking about that as well, like, when I was doing this top 5, but I thought back and like when he tore his ACL, like, and that's been his most significant injury out of every injury he's had. He hasn't gone through that many injuries outside of that ACL. That just happened this past year. Yeah. It was non-contact. So it's not like he's going out there getting injured because he's getting hit.
That's a good point.
And I want to make that clear because I think, at first, my top 5 was a little different here and there, but to close it out, I was like, I really had to like look into the tape, really dig in, and really come out with who I like the best. And so that's why I have him at number two. I mean, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, he's undersized," but I think you're going to get a competitor if you get him. I mean, he's intense and he just plays his hardest. But outside of that, I see why you have Kenny Pickett at number two. I mean, what you used is what I used as negatives. You use them as positives.
Yeah.
Which, I get that. That's
I
a lot
definitely,
of
I definitely liked your perception of how the experience and all that. That definitely is a
yeah,
con for me too. But
I
I think I
just
just more on the positive side with that.
yeah, no, I get that. I just think what I think is like he's just been playing for so long. You'd think you would have more to like look forward to as a fan,
Right.
as a team. But I mean, I get what you're saying. That experience is good, especially with this draft class. I mean, I think if he didn't have that experience that he has, I like in just based off of last year, I don't think he would be in the top five at all, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. But I'm telling you this like this, man. There are some teams that are going to be out there that are going to love the Kenny Pickett prospect.
Yeah,
I think for us, we see guys like, especially last year's draft with Justin Fields and Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. We're like, well, look how special these guys are. But I think there's going to be teams that are going to be like, man, we don't need all the extra, pizzazz and all that. Just give me a quarterback. And I think if you're
that can start winning day one.
yeah,
I get
yeah.
that.
I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are just like, okay, we'll work on the extra stuff later. We could train that later. We just need a QB down to that young QB to develop.
Yeah,
All
but
right, man.
I'll give you my number one. I got
Yes, man. I was just about to
I
ask
mean,
that. Number one
Malik
overall.
Malik Willis. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, there's a little bias there, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, when a QB is as good as Malik is, I don't know how you can say quote unquote bias. I mean, yeah, I like to watch Liberty every once in a while, but at the same time, and I've been to a couple of their games, and I've seen Malik play in person, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome sight. I saw like some of his best highlights that he has, I saw live, which is awesome. I'm
Wow.
glad I got that opportunity to see, an NFL caliber QB play. But Malik just brings so much. And to be fair, I think he gets such a bad rap. I mean, think about it. He has as much exposure as Trey Lance and Zach Wilson. I mean, in terms of, small school and has to prove it. But he's proven it. Just like Zach Wilson did, just like Trey Lance did, but he doesn't get the same love as Trey Lance and Zach Wilson.
Oh no.
He's not going to be. He's not. I think it would be wise for the Lions to draft him, but at number two, because obviously the Jags don't need a QB, but like why I don't see them doing that. I mean, I don't know why though. I think it would be stupid not to. I mean, you have a very, very talented QB who has as much talent and exposure as Zach Wilson and Trey Lance when they were both in their respective colleges. And I think, Malik has toughness. He'll run people over if he has to. He can move in the pocket. He can throw on the run like the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
If you see his tape, most of it is him throwing on the run.
Really
And
good.
imagine him actually having a good pocket pass in where he doesn't have to necessarily throw on the run, where he can just sit back there and without, having to worry about, am I going to, get sacked? I mean, obviously, he can't, make sandwiches back there and, relax. But at the same time, him being in the NFL, he'll have a much better O line than what he had at Liberty.
Especially
And
going to Detroit. Detroit's O line isn't that bad.
no,
Like
not at all.
it's really not that bad. So
Not at all. And I mean, there's a lot of and I mean, I love watching Liberty, but at the same time, you know, a lot of times I feel like sometimes his wide receivers would let him down. Same with his tight ends and his running backs. When he would get the ball out to them and you know, they would let him down in terms of drop balls, you know, not making the catch or the, you know, extra play for Malik. But I have Malik at number one. I mean, what I see is, you know, the reason I have him over Matt Corral is because one, he can run better than Matt Corral. Matt Corral can in terms of scrambling. And number two, you know, he can throw just as good, if not better. I mean, he can throw the best deep ball out of any of these players. I think, my opinion, I mean, I was watching his pro day and one of his, and I think it was his last throw, he was moving out of the pocket, basically threw it up off his back foot right into the basket of his tight end or wide receiver. I didn't know exactly. I think it was his wide receiver. But yeah, that's why I'm Malik at number one.
yeah, bro, I do too. You know, and for very similar reasons as you have him. But you know, I think the thing that really stuck out for me was his feet. You know, he has very quick feet. He's elusive. He's slippery. You know, he you know, I've just never seen a quarterback like him that just has such a good wiggle to him to make linebackers miss. You know, his juke is crazy, dude. Like it looks like a running back kind of, you know. You know, I'm not trying to put him in that type of conversation, like, you know, but he's a quarterback, that's for sure. But you know, the way he moves his body it's I think it's better than how Justin Fields moved his body and how Justin Fields avoided tackles. You know, I don't think we've seen a guy that is this slippery, this elusive since maybe Lamar Jackson. Seriously. And his vision too, you know, the way he plans, okay, I'm gonna make this guy miss, I'm gonna hit this angle, okay, I'm gonna make this guy miss at this angle so I can go this way. And he has such a good anticipation when he's running. He's just not reckless, like, let me just avoid the tackles. He's smart. And I think that's rare to see with a runner. You know, again, really good deep ball thrower. I know I put Matt Corral maybe as the best deep ball thrower, but you know, I think Malik Willis is really up there, you know, and I'm not going to challenge anybody who thinks he's the best. I think he's the best at throwing on the run in terms of like 30 yards down the field, 40 yards down the field. I think there's no question about that. But I don't know if he's better than Matt Corral. It's just standing still in the pocket and just launching it. He's very strong athlete. You know, he can shred a lot of tackles, a ton of tackles. You saw that against Syracuse. You know, guys are just hitting on him, just throwing their bodies on him. He's just move out of my way, get out of my way, just rolling them off his shoulders. You know, and that's just special. You know, that's next level. And I love Sam Howell's toughness. I love Sam Howell's ability to break tackles, but it's not on the same level as Malik Willis. And, you know, a lot of people, when they talk about Malik Willis, talk about that Ole Miss game. And let's just say this right off the bat. Liberty is not on the same level as Ole Miss. Like if we're talking about a football team, it's just Ole Miss is here, Liberty is here. You know, they're not even close. And when I watch quarterbacks who are on a lesser team play against that type of high level talent, my whole thing is don't be the reason why you lose the game. And I think Malik Willis was definitely not the reason why they lost that game against Ole Miss. You know, I think he played very well considering the talent that he has, considering the time that he had in the pocket. Liberty's O-line is just not something to write home about. And so I think, you know, he wasn't the reason why they lost in the game. And I think he made a lot of good plays for him. And so that excites me too, you know, going against that high level talent with the lack of talent that you have and still competing well and not being the reason why you failed. Malik Willis has a lot to be proud of. And I think he's definitely the best quarterback coming out of this draft.
Well, and he has still so much more left to prove.
Yeah. And potential. Yeah.
I know.
And some of the cons, I think there are some cons as much as I love him. I think he'll need to learn how to surrender sort of plays, kind of like the Carson Wentz problem. You don't need to be a superhero all the time.
Yeah.
But I just say that's really because of the bad offensive line. When you have an offensive line that can't protect you that well, that mentality is going to just naturally happen. Because you're just like, hey, man, I can't get sacked every play. We're not going to move the football downfield. So I got to be a hero sometimes. I think sometimes you get into that mentality of like,
no,
okay,
I totally agree with that.
Just relax, just surrender the down. We don't need to force too much. And I think against some of the teams that were better than him, like Syracuse and Liberty and things of that nature, that kind of hurt him a bit, especially when it got into the interception category. I think also he kind of gets fixated on one receiver sometimes. I think when I was watching that Syracuse game, there were some other guys that were open downfield, but he just never got to them in his progression. And so I think that's one of the things that's his biggest concern for me is, okay, man, number one, number two, number three, just look through the field, be patient, look through the field. And again, you could blame that on the offensive line because maybe he's just not used to having enough time to go through his progressions. He's not used to saying, okay, man, this edge rusher is about to hit me. I don't have time to look at 3, 4. I just got to focus on one and see if I get the ball in that space. Yeah. So I think him having NFL protection, especially if he goes to a team like the Detroit Lions, is going to help him too. Yeah. And so he's really a great prospect, and I think he's deserving of being the number 1 QB going off the board. And as you were saying, just raw talent, raw ability, is just out of this world. I think he reminds me. I think if he could get these things fixed, he could be like maybe a Russell Wilson type player. Maybe even a little bit better in terms of running. I think on that compartment, he could be a better scrambler than Russell Wilson, just because Russell Wilson doesn't just have that wiggle and anticipation like Malik Willis. So overall, Malik Willis is the number 1 overall QB. I think the three of us, you, me, and Brandon, we all agree about that. So that's really fun. But great list. I think this is.
I'll go over it one last time. Number 5, I got Ridder, Desmond Ridder. Number 4, I got Kenny Pickett. Number 3, I got Sam Howell. Number 2, I got Matt Corral. And number 1, my boy Malik Willis.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we disagree with is Kenny Pickett. But other than that, we are on the same page for a lot of these guys. So before we wrap up the pod, we have missed a lot of NFL news. So I just want to go through real quick and kind of get your opinions on it, And I think the first thing we really need to talk about is the Deshaun Watson trade. That feels kind of like a decade ago, but I think it's still worthy to talk about. What was your reaction to this trade? You're a Ravens fan. I'm a Steelers fan. This trade affects us a lot. So where does that put the Browns in the AFC North?
I mean, the Browns were already a competitor with Baker Mayfield, which, I have a strong opinion about all that's going on. But I think Deshaun Watson just brings a whole nother level. I mean, I think this division is going to be, they call it the black and blue division for a reason. I mean, I think, the Ravens historically have done pretty well against Deshaun Watson, but that's when he was with the Texans, and the Texans aren't necessarily, a solid team anymore, or even a solid team when he was there. But I think it was a great trade for the Browns. And I think they're a Super Bowl caliber team just because they traded for him. But I mean, as a Ravens fan, I mean, they have to play the Bengals, us, and the Steelers.
There's not a bad team. There's not a bad team in that division.
Yeah, it's 6. They had to play us, all the three of us 6 times a year. So I mean, really, this division's anyone's division.
It's the best division of football. Can we just say it? It's
I don't know, that AFC West, bro.
It's the best division of football. AFC West, I love those teams. They don't play as tough as we do. There's no game like Steelers versus Ravens, Steelers versus Browns. The physicality,
I know.
it's just so different, man. I love the
That's
AFC
true,
West, but I think AFC North will plan out to be the best division in football. I know the Steelers, we have Mitchell Trubisky, but our defense is still really tough and competitive. So I was shocked when I saw this trade. I didn't think the Browns was going to commit to him as long as they did.
Well,
They gave him a lot of money, a ton of money. So
Yeah.
he's going to be a Cleveland Brown maybe for the rest of his career.
yeah.
And I don't know if I put him over the Ravens quite yet. There's a lot to figure out. He's being a new team, new quarterback, things of that nature. I don't know.
I want people to, though. I want people to put the Ravens on this pedestal that we're not the Ravens of old, because the people that are doing that is just like building that fire for the Ravens. I mean, what have the Ravens done that have really what have the Ravens done that they can actually control that has, put them in the position where it's like they're still not that team. They're not that good.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I don't see it either. The Bengals too. I mean, it's just going to be a tough year for some of these for our AFC North teams.
Yep.
But let's move on. Let's talk about the other side of this equation. You said you have strong feelings about Baker Mayfield. Let him out. What are you thinking about Baker Mayfield, man? This whole situation.
I thought the Browns totally betrayed Baker Mayfield. I like Baker Mayfield. All right, I'm gonna say it. What has he done that has been so pitiful that he can't control? I mean, he played with like a torn ligament in his arm.
Talk about it.
I mean, what do you expect? The amount of hate he got from that fan base over last year after just bringing them to the playoffs the first time in who knows when. I mean, come on, man. I mean, what are you gonna do? Hate on your QB that has really changed the culture in Cleveland. He really did. He really did. Even if you dislike him now, I mean, he still has a lot to prove. One, he has a chip on his shoulder, no pun intended, because he's going through that injury, and but he does have a chip on his shoulder because the team that he just changed the culture around really betrayed him.
Yeah.
I think whatever team gets him will get a good competitor. He's always been competitive, but like it just upsets me that someone with his potential and his playing ability gets so much hate for something he can't control outside in terms of injury.
And now, if he would have sat out during his injuries, they would have called him soft.
Yeah.
Oh, you're soft. Sure. You're not rushing back to play. You don't want this. You're scared. That's not how a top quarterback should approach the game. Now he goes out there and plays. He's hurt. He doesn't play well. Well, all of a sudden Baker Mayfield's a bust. I heard a crazy thing from Booker McFarland. He used to do Monday Night Football, who said Baker Mayfield is not a top 32 quarterback. What? Are you kidding me? You cannot name me 32 QBs that are better than Baker Mayfield. No way. No way. And he's in a tough spot right now because there's a lot of jobs that have just been filled. But there's not 32 quarterbacks that are better than Baker Mayfield. Absolutely not. And I've been a Baker Mayfield fan since we started this podcast. There's been ups, there's been downs, but I think he's just, I was one of the few people that said, go ahead and give him that, extension. Go ahead and sign him long-term. In hindsight, obviously now with Deshaun Watson, that's a bad choice.
Yeah.
But considering during that time, he was playing really good football, and he just broke my Pittsburgh Steelers hearts when he came to that playoff game. That was the most painful game I've ever watched as a Steelers fan.
Yeah.
And it was because of Baker Mayfield. And so I don't understand this like, oh, he's not a good quarterback. He's a bust. I think
one of the best games I've ever seen.
Yeah, I know for you, right? But he still has a lot of great football left in him when he's healthy.
Yeah.
And I think, I would take him over Matt Ryan if I was the Colts. I know the
Really?
Colts kind of had a situation where, they kind of tried it with Phillip Rivers. That didn't work out. Carson Wentz didn't work out. So they had to go with the safer bet. And Matt Ryan is a safer choice over Baker Mayfield. But
Yeah.
long term, I'm going with Baker Mayfield without a doubt. So it's disappointing to see kind of how the tables have turned. But, I think there is going to be a team, if not this year or next year, that are going to be in the Baker Mayfield hunt because he's just that good.
Yeah.
So let's move on real quick. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill, man. And what's happening with the wide receiver market is crazy. Deebo Samuels, after the Devontae Adams trade and Tyreek trade, he wants his money. DK Metcalf is looking for an extension too. We got a lot of receivers who are like, okay, give me. And it was all because of Tyreek Hill. What do you think of this trade, and what do you think about the wide receiver market right now?
I was blown away with that trade. I think Tyreek Hill is the best wide receiver. And when he was with the Chiefs, he was the best wide receiver in the NFL. And I'll say that. And his speed brought him to that position. Travis Kelce was also great, and the Travis Kelce effect made it easier for Tyreek Hill, but same thing for Travis Kelce. Tyreek Hill made it easier for Travis Kelce. But I mean,
way easy for Tyreek for Travis Kelce.
for sure. But I mean, Tyreek Hill, I don't know what the Chiefs were thinking. What were the Chiefs thinking? All these players coming into your division expecting to beat you because of the trades that they're making.
Yep.
They put themselves in a better position than the Chiefs do because of the trade. I'm like, and then the players you got in return are Juju Smith-Schuster, which Juju's not
bad. My man Juju, stop it.
Hey, he's not bad. Him and Jackson Mahomes can do some TikToks together. Don't get me wrong. And Valdez-Scantling, I think it was the guy from Green Bay. I mean, like, those two players don't replace Tyreek Hill.
No, it's not even close. They're not even half the player Tyreek Hill is.
Well, like I think Juju has, he plays with a lot of heart, and he's, plays physical and stuff, but it's just he just doesn't have the speed like Tyreek Hill does. I mean, like, no, it's like, how are you gonna find that again? How are you gonna find that again in another wide receiver? I mean, closest thing that they have is the other fast wide receiver, Malik Hardman or something like that. Mecole Hardman. Yeah. I mean, he's fast, but he doesn't have the route package that Tyreek Hill does, good, separation Tyreek Hill does. But I don't know. That always gets me fed up. It's just teams in your division are making the trades to beat you, and then you're trading away your best players. Just doesn't make sense.
I think Tyreek Hill was asking for a lot of money too. I think that was the big final thing was.
So you pay him.
They're like, hey man, and Tyreek Hill is not the youngest guy. I mean, he's still really good, but he's not one of the more younger receivers like Jamar Chase, obviously. Some of these other Justin Jefferson, some of these other guys are on the up and up. So, I think they just didn't want to get trapped into a long-term contract that's with a lot of guarantee money for a guy who maybe get injury prone towards the end of the deal. But I understand completely, especially that the last season that the Chiefs had, which was pretty up and down, you lost a huge weapon. And although you got back some guys, as you said, Juju Smith-Schuster and Valdez-Scantling, those aren't speed receivers. I love Juju Smith-Schuster, but he doesn't have the top end speed to break a guy on a vertical route or a fade. Like he's as much as I love him, he's more of a possession receiver, and you really didn't need that. And so I mean, they got a lot of picks back, so they can restock down the road. But this really hurt their football team, as you just said. And I think it was kind of a bad move. And I think a lot of the owners, NFL owners, didn't like this move because now their best wide receiver is going to be asking for a lot of money. And you know how the National Football League works.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy got paid that much money, so I need to get paid more money than that.
Yeah.
And you know what's the limit? Where's the, hey man, we can't give you $30 million as a receiver, and I think that's what these guys will be asking for. I feel bad for teams like the Vikings and the Bengals are going to have to pay Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I mean, holy cow. How much are you going to really commit to these guys? And so they really busted the receiver market with this deal, the Miami Dolphins, and making it very hard for some of these other teams to retain their top end guys. So it's one of those sort of type of things.
Yeah.
But you never know. It's a crazy league, the craziest offseason ever, hands down. And it's just not even close. So
Hey, more podcasts come as well. We're gonna hit defensive players, we're gonna hit wide receivers, we're gonna hit cornerbacks, we're gonna hit edge rushers. We'll hit a lot.
We'll hit a lot
in one pod. And I'll be looking forward to it. And we'll be doing like top offense players, top defense players. I don't know.
Yes, sir. Get ready for this draft. Get ready for this draft that comes up. And come on, Steelers, move up and get Malik Willis. Come on, man.
and mock draft coming the day before the draft. So just be on lookout for that. That's gonna be a great podcast. And
tell him, Jacob. Tell him.
We'll get a look back and see, how many picks I got right and how many picks CG flopped on.
Whew. I'll probably have to do it a different mentality than I did last.
You should.
I probably should, because my picks were all over the place.
It's totally up to you. I mean, for the way that you did, I mean, it wasn't. You can't base it off of correctness. You base it off of what you would do, which I don't mind that. I don't know, but with that being said, make sure you to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe to Brandon as well. We'll put the link down in the description for Brandon, and
a lot of good football stuff on his page.
For sure.
All right, y'all. Peace out, and we'll see you in the next pod.
All right, see you.